Besem Abwa Waldem Feskadus Adawamla Amen. Besem Abwa Waldem Feskadus Adawamla Amen. Besem Abwa Waldem Feskadus Adawamla Amen. Good evening. It's 10 p.m. and this is the latest I've given a Bible reading since I've started these, about 170 something days ago, if not a little bit more. Yeah, it's just been a really full-on day. Went to the funeral today of Emu Teklemeriam in London, in the Battersea Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and yeah, beautiful service for a really beautiful woman, and she's the granddaughter of Blatangeta Haroi, the Ethiopian Foreign Minister who died in Bath in 1938. And yeah, I've worked closely with her and got to know her, and I just send prayers and condolences for Emu's family, who are all, yeah, just the kindest souls. So sending love to you all. And then it is back to Bath this evening for the piano performance of Germa Yefarashua in Bath Abbey. And that was an incredible event as well. So, yeah, really full-on day of Ethiopian culture, the sadness at the beginning, and then celebration in the evening with Germa. But you know, it's a beautiful celebration of life for Emu. So yeah, 11 p.m. So we'll get on with the reading, and hopefully I can get it sent before midnight to keep up with the Bible a day, process. So Deuteronomy chapter 7, give thanks. When Yahweh, your God, brings you in the land where you go to possess it, and casts out many nations before you, the Hittite, the Girgashite, the Amorite, and the Canaanite, the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when Yahweh your God delivers them up before you, and you strike them, then you shall utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them. You shall not make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to his son, nor shall you take his daughter for your son, for that would turn away your sons from following me, that they may serve other gods. So Yahweh's anger would be kindled against you, and he would destroy you quickly. But you shall deal with them like this. You shall break down their altars, dash their pillars into pieces, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their engraved images with fire. For you are a holy people to Yahweh your God. Yahweh your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession, all above peoples who are on the face of the earth. Yahweh didn't set his love on you nor choose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all the peoples, but because Yahweh loves you and because he desires to keep the oath which he swore to your fathers. Yahweh has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, from the land of the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Know therefore that Yahweh your God himself is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and loving kindness to 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments, and repays those who hate him to their face and destroys them. He will not be slack to them. He hates them. He will repay him in his face. You shall therefore keep the commandments, the statutes, the ordinances, which I command you today. To them it shall happen because you listen to the ordinances and keep and do them. For Yahweh your God will keep you with you the covenant and the loving kindness which he has swore to your fathers. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your body and the fruit of your ground, your grain and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your livestock and the young of your flock, in the land which he swore to your fathers to give you. You will be blessed above all the peoples. You won't be the male or female barren against you, out among your livestock. Yahweh will take away from you all sickness, and he will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which you know, on you, but will lay them on all those who hate you. You shall consume all the peoples whom Yahweh your God shall deliver to you. Your eyes shall not pity them. You shall not serve their gods, for that would be a snare to you. If you shall say in your heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? You shall not be afraid of them. You shall remember well that Yahweh your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt, the great trials which your eye saw, the signs, the wonders, the mighty hand or an outstretched arm by which Yahweh your God brought you out. So shall Yahweh your God do to all the peoples of whom you are afraid? Moreover, Yahweh your God will send the hornet among them, until those who are left and hide themselves perish from before you. You shall not be scared of them, for Yahweh your God is among you, a great and awesome God. Yahweh your God will cast out those nations before you little by little. You may not consume them at once, lest the animals of the field increase on you. But Yahweh your God will deliver them up before you, and will confuse them with a great confusion until they are destroyed. He will deliver their kings into your hand. You shall make their name perish from under the sky. No one will be able to stand before you until you have destroyed them. You shall burn the engraved images of their gods with fire. You shall not covet the silver or the gold that is on them, nor take it for yourself, lest you be snared in it. For it is an abomination to Yahweh your God. You shall not bring an abomination into your house and become a devoted thing like it. You shall utterly detest it. You shall utterly abhor it, for it is a devoted thing. For these 3 words I give thanks, blessings, and love. So what we have in this chapter, it starts off quite violent, and it has Yahweh commanding Moses to essentially flatten the Hittite, the Girgashite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, the 7 nations greater and mightier than you. So it actually says here that these nations are greater and mightier than Israel, but Israel shall still end up destroying those nations because they are the nations and the land that constitute the promised land from Israel. And it talks about flattening their temples, burning their idols and destroy everything in sight and completely kind of annihilate them. And it's interesting, the language of these things, because we've seen this before when it talks about complete annihilation and everything is destroyed. But actually a little bit later, in a few chapters' time, there's still Canaanites about. There's pacts that have been made with different peoples from different lands, and we know that it isn't total annihilation. So some of the language of war is slightly sounds more than it actually is. So that's one thing. Also, in terms of particularly land of Canaan and the Perizzite, the Hivite, that previously in Genesis, God talks about how there's a delayed destruction because in these lands were child sacrifice to the gods. There was all kinds of, immoral practices going on, and God wanted to punish them at that point, and then he steps back and he kind of delays because he said it hasn't reached its point yet. So this chapter, it is presented as a violent chapter, and it's a kind of a holy war chapter, and often many scholars talk about this isn't Israel's war, this is God's war, because again, in a few chapters' time, we see Joshua meeting the angel, and the angel says, this is God's war. God's taken this forward. This isn't Israel. So this seems to be kind of a personal attack, if you like, that God's been watching these lands and actually wanting to start to rectify, particularly the child sacrifices and these sort of things that have been going on. So it's kind of again, another fulfillment of a promise and a prophecy, but it is manifested in a violent way, and it's making way for this new law. Again, because it's violent, it can be quite difficult to read and challenging to read, and I've talked about those in previous chapters. And again, thinking about this broader context, in terms of the creation of the world, the creation of the promised land, and talked yesterday about this new creation. So the world is still very much in development. And I think that's one of the reasons why these early chapters can sound very violent, with these kind of massacres and these kind of things, because it's in the early days of the world, and we've seen how there's been pushback. We've seen there's times when God wanted to punish all of Israel for their idol worship. And actually it's Moses that says, God, do you really want to punish everyone for the actions of a few? And again, something else to put in context, that the fight against these nations, the Canaanite and the Hittite, etc., it's not a racial fight, because it's much more of a cultural fight in terms of their practices. Because again, we've seen before, and we will see again, Israel do fall into idol worship, and they do fall into all of the practices that all these tribes and peoples are accused of doing, and Israel themselves get heavily punished again by God. So it's not a fight that God's taken on which is against a particular people, is against particular activities, but Israel themselves are also up against those same punishments when they get involved in those activities. So God, again, it's, that judgment of Moses, trying to raise the bar for moral behavior, for what is acceptable in this new dawn of creation. And this moment of entering the promised land is also showing to the Canaanite, the Jebusites, etc., what is the moral standard of accepted behaviors in these lands. And Israel are meant to be the pinnacle and the example of that, which is why when they fall away from that, they also get punished as well. So, yeah, again, thinking about these chapters in its wider context of the time, as well as looking at the implications of it further down the line, and how the consistency of those behaviors and those punishments as well kind of, I think, puts it into context. So trying to see chapters like this in the round, on face value, there's no doubt it's challenging and it's violent and all those kind of things going on. Strategically, there's a number of other things going on which is slightly more complex and nuanced, as I explained. In a modern day context, it does raise those questions of, what is right and just? What is a holy war? Is such a thing still, fit for purpose in modern context? And I'm not going to speak to that, because modern day context is is a very complex, movable thing. And, there's whole thesis and lectures and TED Talks about that I'm not going to get into. So dealing with the Bible narratives on this kind of micro scale, we can kind of unpick it and deconstruct it and just get a sense of what's going on and why things are happening in the way that they're happening, just to get that fuller understanding. So I will end it here, because I need to, again, upload this before midnight. So have a blessed rest of the night if you're not going to bed straight away. But, I'm under no illusion people are watching this as soon as I upload it. You watch it when you watch it, and all blessings to you whenever you engage in this material, if you do at all. So give thanks, blessings and love, and God willing, be back with more tomorrow. Glory to God.